We're going to bring in Fox Weather hurricane specialist Bryan Norcross. Bryan joining us this morning. Bryan, we're close to a hurricane. We're not quite there yet, but it is expected to happen at some point today.
Not officially a hurricane, but NOAA research aircraft is in there right now. And the data they're sending back would indicate hurricane force winds. We'll let the National Hurricane Center do the analysis on it. They're still checking out the storm. They'll go back and double check around what is now a core of a hurricane. That's what this storm was missing. It was missing a core. Remember, the dust and dry air kept filtering in. There's still some in the area, but now we have a core. Now we have a strong kind of feeder band coming around here, another one up in here. So this is developing as a significant tropical system. I don't think any question about it. I think the odds are this will be Hurricane Erin at 11 a.m. Eastern time, if not before. Let's look close up. There you see where the Hurricane Center is locating the center of circulation. And when I say a core, I mean look right around it. That's centered on this core of thunderstorm activity. And here you see these big bands of moisture now rotating around that we didn't have before. We still have dry air out here that's trying to come around and get in, but it's being pushed out because there's enough moisture coming up into the system and pushing out on it. And when we look at the dust, you can see it's made a pocket there of kind of dust-free air, almost dust-free air, actually. It looks like a little bit of a finger coming up in here. But that's what they do. That moisture comes from the warm ocean, and if the system gets going and the circulation gets going, it pulls in the moist air from the surface of the ocean and spreads it out and pushes out the dust and moistens the environment. And then it's like not throwing sand in the engine. The engine can really start spinning, and that's what's going on out there right now, more or less kind of right on schedule. And look at the warm water up ahead. So no problem now with cool water that it's had for the last few days. So it's right on schedule. If you've been following it the last few days, they've been doing a fantastic job at the Hurricane Center on this forecast, as have the models done an excellent job. Sure enough, it's lifting to the north of the islands. It looked freaky yesterday. It looked like it was going to come right through there. I know we did a Q&A yesterday afternoon, and people were concerned about that, but no, it's going to lift north of the islands. You can see they have by tomorrow morning a 90-mile-an-hour hurricane, slowly and steadily intensifying up to 130 mile an hour. That's Category 4 as it's north of the Dominican Republic here on Monday. The other thing to notice about the cone, so just kind of space this out. So this is tomorrow morning, this is Sunday morning, and then we go to Monday morning. So Sunday morning and Monday morning, and then Tuesday morning. Notice in here, the space between these is much less. So it's going to slow down when it gets up in here and starts making this turn going north. And we'll talk more about what that turn going north means in just a second. But first, let's mention what's going on for the islands. Here's the close-up of the cone and the islands. Notice they have a tropical storm watch up. The governments here of these various northeastern Caribbean islands put up a tropical storm watch yesterday on the idea that the edge effects could produce tropical storm force winds over those islands. The National Hurricane Center, who's responsible for Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, has not put up a tropical storm watch, and I'll show you why I think that might be the case. Look at the wind speed probabilities. What you notice here is the yellows are a higher probability than the light green is a higher probability than the dark green. And if you notice, the yellows come closer to these northeastern Caribbean islands, and as the storm is beginning to turn to the north, you don't quite get to the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico here. So they may be evaluating at the Hurricane Center whether they want to put up the tropical storm watches. I'm sure it's right on the edge of their thresholds for putting up that watch, and because it's not a wind issue here, although there will be wind gusts over the islands, is more a rain issue. And here I can show you, this is actually the wind, but what I want you to notice is the structure of the storm. Notice it comes down and has this kind of tail of wind here where you see the darker winds. So as this storm moves this way, that tail will bring moisture in from the south and wind in from the south. And that's why the concern in Puerto Rico with the big mountain is on the south side and the east side, the windward side, where that wind is going to, the moisture feeding into the storm is going to run into the mountains. And that's true of all of the mountains that have higher terrain on the Virgin Islands, for example. So it's a close call whether you put up the tropical storm watch. They decided to do it there for the islands, and we'll see if the Hurricane Center may still decide to do it for Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, depending on how quickly the Erin intensifies and how strong it looks like it will be just to the north. But anyway, this is not going to be a direct hit. It's going to be a glancing blow, an edge effect in the islands as it goes by this weekend. Okay, now let's look at the end of the cone and what's going to happen next. And here you see the estimate is 120 mile an hour category 3. Here, kind of a beam of Cape Canaveral or so. And the idea is that as it turns and moves north, the top winds will weaken, but the storm will expand in size. So the energy will spread out in size. So when we look at the forecast uncertainty compared to the cone, what do you see here? You see that by far most of these L's are in the cone there. We do have a few stragglers over here and one over here, but generally this is what the cone is telling us. This is what the uncertainty is in that time frame. But okay, now let's go forward in time beyond the time period of the cone. So here we are. Here's the time up here. Here's Wednesday. Notice things spread out, but what I want you to notice is they tend to spread out to the right, which puts some concern for Bermuda. The core of them is still right in here and well offshore. A couple of stragglers over here, but each one of these is down just more than a 1% chance. So we're talking, if you have 3 coming up this way, that's a 3%, 3 or 4% chance. So it's very, very low, and we generally just discount the extreme stragglers. Going forward in time more, we have just high confidence that this system is going to go between the North Carolina and Bermuda. Will it come very close to Bermuda? That's a maybe, but all this over here, this noise by North Carolina is not really a concern. This is going to be offshore of the U.S. East Coast, well offshore, I think. So the issue is not going to be the winds with the circulation, even though it's going to expand. It's going to be the wave energy coming in and the swells put in the ocean. And here we can see we use wave heights as kind of a proxy for the energy that the system is putting in the ocean. These wave heights are not crashing on the shore wave heights. These are, if you've ever been in a cruise ship, these are the waves out in the ocean and how, from the peaks to the valleys, how big are they? And you can see the big ones are on the right side of the circulation here, but the energy spreads out. So here we are, again up here, Tuesday morning. Notice it starts, and notice the Bahamas. It's all along the other side of the Bahamas, so that kind of protects southeast Florida. The Bahama Bank, it's called, it always protects Miami, Fort Lauderdale, southern Palm Beach County from the swells. But Palm Beach County north in Florida and then all the way up to Cape Hatteras, starting to get the energy on Tuesday morning. That's rip currents, strong ocean currents, dangerous waves, dangerous beach conditions, and waterways and so forth will be affected by this. Then let's go to Wednesday, and you can see that colors get brighter here. More energy from about Vero Beach in Florida on up to Cape Hatteras. That's on Wednesday morning. Through the day, this all moves north, of course, so they're probably going to have to close a bunch of beaches in here, and we'll see about Cape Hatteras and what they decide to do there in Dare County in terms of the amount of push of water and Highway 12 and so forth right along the coast. And then spreading north, and this is early Tuesday morning or Thursday morning, and unfortunately around high tide Thursday morning here from Long Island on down the Jersey Shore, the Delmarva, and on down to the north side of Cape Hatteras. This is going to be maximum energy if everything plays out on this timetable. So this is when you're really going to have to watch out here for water rise along the coast, but also battering waves, eroding waves, and so forth along the coast. And then by Thursday, it's pulling away, and there's still some effect here Thursday, but much less. So it looks like early Thursday is when this is going to peak right there. So that's what we're going to be concerned about for the U.S. East Coast. We have just a very minimal concern for any kind of direct impacts. All right, let's take one more look at the timing. So it starts on Sunday, but really picks up when we get into next week and spreads north and then is gone by the weekend. So a lot of folks with their their weekend in August, the shore should be fine. All right, in the Gulf, there is a hurricane hunter out just to check this thing out, but a little bit of a sign of a circulation in there on the radar. You can see, you're going to check it just before it goes ashore, but mostly this is a moisture thing and a potential flood event for South Texas, and some of that moisture spreading up into South Central Texas as well, and mostly along the coast. Highway 69C comes right down there on the west side of Brownsville, and that will be the issue. So down here in Cameron County, maybe the southern part of Hidalgo County, and the Rio Grande Valley, flood threat there, but this thing will just slowly dissipate as it moves inland later today. All right, guys, so lots going on, but I think the basically good news for the U.S. East Coast, although this will be concerning for along the beaches, and it is an August weekend, an August week, people on vacation and so forth. So that's really that issue.
Yeah, a lot of folks still doing the beach thing. So, I mean, next week is going to be one to watch for the Eastern Seaboard. Bryan, curious to know your thoughts on the yesterday explicitly showing rapid intensification. The NHC has dialed that back. I know intensity forecasts are challenging, but we've also seen now that ceiling for peak intensity to rise. Does that speak to the slowing down of Erin, perhaps, as it's moving north of the islands before making that turn away from the Bahamas? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it still has a lot to intensify here. If it gets to be a 75-mile-an-hour storm, yeah, they've kind of slowed the ramp, right? But they've also brought it up here. Today, this could be an 80-mile-an-hour storm at 11 o'clock here based on the hurricane hunters and how they analyze. Sometimes they get data in and they say, no, that's bogus data, although I don't see any sign of that just in my quick analysis here. So I think that all this is timing, right? Because the storm is over very warm water and there is some hostile wind that is forecast to affect it near the islands, and then that lets up. But the timing of that, how does that timing work with the fact that it gets picked up by the jet stream, and that tends to make it weaken and spread out in size. So you have these various things, some are making it intensify, some making it spread out and distribute the energy, some keeping it a little bit on the weaker side. And so they have to fine-tune the forecast as that new data and new projections come in, every cycle. So this doesn't say anything to me besides the fact that when you're looking 3 or 4 or 5 days out, you always have, plus or minus uncertainty on all of these atmospheric factors and how they're going to come together.
Hats off with their first advisory that we got earlier this week. They showed this thing strengthening into a major hurricane. So there's always been an indication that this thing was going to have that possibility of getting to the major status.
Yeah, that northward spin. I'll tell you what, you look right now where it is on radar and on satellite. It's intimidating to see it getting closer to land, though it's still 500 miles away from the northern Leeward Islands. That northward turn is just so critical in terms of a best case scenario for so many people. So, we watch and will continue to monitor Erin through the weekend, obviously, and for the eastern seaboard. But liking, of course, what we're seeing, Bryan, as opposed to what it could have been. So thank you. All right.
Exactly.
Hurricane specialist Bryan Norcross joining us this morning, and we'll be checking in with Bryan on Fox Weather, not us personally, but Fox Weather with Bryan throughout the day. Well, maybe throughout the weekend. Thanks, Bryan.
All right. See you later.